I want to jump into Lead Like Jesus now. So I wonder if you said if that Phil is available to join us.
Well, I'd have to go and ask him if he would do that. We met on the bus going to orientation camp, freshman year at Cornell in 1957. And we were just adding up the years now. It's only, been about 65 years.
65. You've known each other for 65 years now.
Yeah, isn't that something? So,
it is something.
He's one of the key people that brought me to the Lord too.
Yeah.
He was.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, Phil? We're talking about Lead Like Jesus now, and it's just appropriate that you join in the conversation. And Ken just said that you brought him to the Lord. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, when I turned my life over to the Lord when I was about 40 in about 1980, one thing I was very joyous about was to share that experience with people I loved. And one of the ones that came to mind was Ken. And so we began to talk and do different things. And at one point in time, I had a book that I wanted to give to him. That was the 4 Spiritual Laws by Bill Bright. And the reason I thought he would be interested in it was because it had been distributed 50 million copies. So I thought the distribution was helpful. But my daughter got that in church school. So I gave it to Ken, and he was very gracious about it, but didn't take a whole lot of mind to it at the moment. But that was kind of a beginning part, because the next part of the story, he was there. He happened to be on a plane going to a conference and sat next to a wonderful American Christian gentleman, Bob Buford,
who Peter Drucker said at one time was in one of the top 5 Christians in America. And so I started to talk to him, and I went into my wallet to get a card to give him. And here was this card that was part of the book that Phil gave me with the 4 spiritual laws. And I said, Bob, this here is here for a reason. And the first law is God has a plan for your life. And I didn't have any problem with that. The second one is that we were sinners. And I didn't like that for 2 reasons. Number one, I don't like labels. And I don't know, Boris, if you've ever called a friend a sinner, they don't say, thanks for sharing, appreciate your comments. No, they attack you back. And then the second thing that didn't make any sense to me was the concept of original sin. How does a baby in a crib be bad, see? And Bob said, I'm not a pastor, Ken, but let me ask you a question. Do you think you're as good as God? And I said, well, obviously, I'm not. If that's God, there's perfection. He said, okay, let's give God 100. We'll give Axe Murderers 5. And Mother Teresa was alive then. So why don't we give her 95? He said, Blanchard, you're not bad. He said, you're trying to help people. I'll give you a 75 or 80. He said, the neat thing about the Lord is he sent Jesus down to make up the difference between you and 100. And what a way to talk about grace rather than calling people sinners and all. Because if you say to somebody, where are you on a 1 to 100 scale, nobody's going to take 100. But you call them a sinner, they're going to get their back up. And that started my journey. So it was really quite a thing. And then Buford asked me to be a final speaker at his first big conference. And all of these business leaders, because he started a thing called halftime, where, you know, after you're 50, you're looking for significance rather than success. And I saw all these business leaders leaving their companies and going out and doing great things for the community, you know. And for some reason, I thought, as I got on my feet, saying, you know, I just think it's great what you're doing, but, you know, you could really still move from success to significance by how you lead your company. And why don't you try to lead it like Jesus? And people went, whoa, like that. And Phil was sitting in the front row, and we got such positive response that we ended up, you know, moving towards starting this ministry, because when we really realized, you know, Jesus was the best.
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful story. I'm glad you shared it to me. I feel blessed to hear it. It takes a lot for a smart guy like Ken to to come to the Lord. So it's not just Phil. He needs to get someone like Bob Beauport into the lineup just to talk to him. That's the most emotional and cognitive conversion I've ever heard. So it's beautiful. So you started Lead Like Jesus together. Who came up with the idea?
Well, we really came up with it together, and we initially wanted to be kind of a partner with Buford. So his thing was called Faith Walk, and so we decided that we would be called what? Faith Walk Leadership.
Yeah, he was originally Faith Works.
Faith Works, he was,
Yeah.
and so we called ours Faith Walk Leadership, and to be kind of a sister organization. And then we created a board, and we got a wonderful guy from Chicago who was in brand management, and he said, that's okay for you to be officially, that, but he said, you're in the Lead Like Jesus business. And we all went, whoa, he's absolutely right. And that was the beginning of calling our ministry Lead Like Jesus. So, and it's amazing, the reception all over the world. You're talking about the reception in the Philippines and all, because everybody loves Jesus. They don't necessarily like Christians, if they're judgmental and evaluative, but they love Jesus as a model. And boy, it's been amazing the number of people who have come to the Lord when that wasn't our initial intention to do that.
No, I'll tell you, Boris, one of the things that God has always been gracious to not let us get more successful than we were mature in the Lord and mature in the message, and that the message matured. Because if we had been successful in our original model, we wouldn't be talking, because it was about coming alongside some Christian businessmen and being consultants to them. But we found quite quickly that the Lord had bigger work for us to be part of. And it was just glorious as it continued to grow, first out of just being for business folks, and then into life role leadership, and understanding that this was something for the whole world as well. So.
Yeah. And Phil, what I like about what you guys did in Lead Like Jesus, it really began with the heart. And I must say my favorite videos were yours, Phil, when you talk about the ego problem and the flip side of the ego problem. And the first time, I don't know if you remember Avery Willis. He was the one who brought Jesus here in the Philippines, the late Avery Willis. I was really so touched when he never really showed the whole encounter or the whole workshop. He just shared the ego diagram, and that caught my attention. And I realized as a leader, shucks, I have pride and fear. I have those as a leader. And you explain it very well in your videos. I must admit, every time I watch it, I'm always in tears, because it reminds me how rotten my heart is and how it needs to be, it needs to be recalibrated all the time. Otherwise, it wouldn't work the way servant leaders should serve.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Avery Willis is a dear friend in the early days and helped guide us. We wrote a first book with him called The Servant Leader, and he was a wonderful, wonderful teacher of teaching how to bring God's word into practical ways. And his programs were a cornerstone in some ways to some of the things we did. Yeah, it was good. And I think that the thing, Boris, that became so evident is after years of looking at leadership in both churches and in business and so forth, that the numbers and the things are a little bit different, but the issues are always the same. It'll start in the heart of the leader, and where the taking of that question of are we seeking to serve or be served is a universal question to be answered.
So effective servant leadership is an inside-out job.
It's a tall order. It's really a big mission altogether. And I must admit, especially during this past year and a half, the world needs leaders who are willing to serve and to come from within. and that's a big challenge. What could you say to people are having difficulty, like myself, teaching others to follow the same to follow the same path? I mean, to surrender their hearts and be servant leaders.
I think the first thing is get back to what we talked about earlier, is that servant leadership is the only way to get both great results and great human relationships, and that they need to understand that. And the reason it is because it covers both, leadership in terms of direction and goals and values and all, and then working for people and making it come alive. And what they really need to do is get out of their own way. One of the fun things is we do have some clients who, when they get together with their team once a week, the first thing they do is have an Egos Anonymous meeting, where everybody's got to stand up and say, "Hi, I'm Ken." And they all go, "Hi, Ken." And then I have to say, "I'm an egomaniac." And then I have to talk about a time in the last week since our last meeting, either false pride or fear got in my way. And I always say to people, if you can't think of a time when your ego got in the way in the last week, you lie about other things too, because it's a real element and we have to constantly work on it. And it's just like with AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, the more you talk about it, the more you can get on top of it. And so that ego thing, starting on the inside, is really powerful.
For our viewers and listeners who might be wondering what the Ego Anonymous is, it's a session in the Lead Like Jesus encounter where everybody gets to admit that they have an ego problem, because that's the first step, awareness. And if they can't admit that they have an ego problem, then that's probably a bigger ego problem altogether. But that's the first step, and then that's you. Without a proper diagnosis, you can't have the right prescription and what to do with that next. And I love that particular session where you talk about humility and God-given confidence, Bill.
Yes. Yeah, the one thing that takes the concept of servant leadership and into Lead Like Jesus is Jesus himself, because it was his obedience and his willingness to obey the Father and be about his glory that gives us the standard and also the power to move into those things. We can't think our way into leadership. We can't do our way into leadership. We have to relate our way in with our relationship to Jesus and to the Father, which empowers, and it's not again a concept, but truly provides the power in the moment to do the thing that would be most advantaged to the kingdom, even if it may not be our first inclination. So, I think the one thing I remember about a first idea about leadership and leading like Jesus, it's the intimacy it requires. And at the intimacy with seeking the will of the Father through the Word and through the Holy Spirit and through Jesus and his teachings and model that allows us to take this into a real active part of our life.
A lot of people are probably warm in their hearts right now, like I am, and a lot of people would probably think, this is good. This is good. I'm inspired. I'm on fire with what you guys are saying. But one of the part that I like about Lead Like Jesus, the habits. What would you say to people? What advice would you give to people when it comes to making sure that they can consistently live out the servant's heart, or as the servant leadership behavior moving forward?
Well, there's two habits. The first one that I think is probably so powerful is, how do you enter your day? We have found that we have two aspects of life. We have a task-oriented self that's used to getting jobs done. Then we have a thoughtful, reflective self. And which one wakes up quicker in the morning? It's the task-oriented self. And you jump out of bed because the alarm goes off. John Ortberg used to say that Why isn't it the opportunity clock? Or it's going to be a great day, no alarm, and you're trying to eat while you're washing, and then you jump in the car, and you're off, and you're racing around and all. And at night you get in bed, you're so tired you don't even have time to say goodnight to somebody who might be lying next to you, and then you're out of it again. And pretty soon you're caught in a rat race. And I love Lily Talman, the old Hollywood philosopher, who said the problem with a rat race is even if you win it, you're still a rat. And so we really feel you need to enter your day slowly, first in solitude, then in prayer, and then in study of scripture and things that to just get yourself calmed down and think about the day and who you want to be in a way. And I think that habit is a powerful one. And there's also a good end of the day powerful thing that Bill Hybels told me about. He said, Blanchard, you goofed up my life in a lot of ways. And he said, but now he does a journal and never did a journal before. In the journal, you put the date in the top, and then you put praisings. What did I do today that's consistent with who I wanted to be? And then redirections. What did I do today? Which I wish I had an instant replay. And I want to tell you, if you track your praisings and your redirections, boy, that's a powerful habit to have, to keep yourself recalibrated on who you want to be. What do you think about that?
Yeah, just a little bit of building that and really and grounding it in. There was a phrase that came to us from a philosopher named Søren Kierkegaard that I loved. And he said, if you first don't seek the kingdom of God today, you probably won't do it the rest of the day. Mm-hmm. And so I remember getting this off of a greeting card, but it said, every morning, and that's a habit, I rest my elbows on the windowsills of heaven and gaze at the glory of God. And with that vision in mind, I turn to meet the day. And that to me is the thing, is acknowledging God and inviting him into the present is the thing will start, at least it's an antidote to the hurry up that'll grab you so quickly. And doing it early is important. That's why I loved even in Jesus's example when he went away in a solitary place and prayed in the morning and was challenged by the disciples with many things that might be good use of his time, but he was able to say, no, let us go to another town and preach, for that is why I've come. And the good, to be able to discern what the good use and the best use of your time really starts at the beginning.
I love it. I love the fact that when you enter the rat race, you're still a rat. And I love the fact that if you don't start with the kingdom now, you'll probably not end the day with the kingdom at all. Wow. Hey, guys, leaders make mistakes, right? So even, I could fall tomorrow and make an awful mistake and choices and decisions. What advice would you give to even even leaders with good intentions of leading with a servant heart if they fall and make a mistake?
Well, the first thing is to admit it. That's why I wrote a book initially, The 1 Minute Apology, but we found out nobody would give it to somebody because they thought you were asking them for apology. So it became the fourth secret of the 1 Minute Manager. But you need to admit right away, say, I goofed and I feel badly, and I'd love to talk to you about how we can get beyond that. But don't cover up and try to hide mistakes, because if you model that, then people will really appreciate it. That's why I love Colleen's phrase about people admire your skills, but they love your vulnerability, which is your willingness to admit when you've made a mistake.
Boris, when I spoke about this subject to my grandson, there was a phrase that came to us, is when you mess up, fess up. And the reason it is the longer you wait between when you realize that you've made a mistake and the time you confess it or bring it to somebody else's attention, the chances are people will give you a lot of grace if you confess quickly, but later it'll be conceived as turned from a weakness into a wickedness. Because in fact, I know I've made a mistake and now I need to rectify it as quickly as possible. And when I don't, then it causes some concern about my motives in the first place. So for a high schooler, if you fess up, if you mess up, fess up, it's pretty good practical advice.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you so much. On behalf of everybody who's been blessed by Lead Like Jesus, guys, this is a double treat. We just asked for Ken. We got Phil Hodges. So it's a double treat to have the founders of Lead Like Jesus to be with us in this particular episode. You guys have been a blessing when it comes to that particular ministry of servant leadership. I wish I had more time to converse with you. I'm obviously enjoying this too much, but I need to be conscious of the time. I would like to wrap up by actually asking you guys to say a message to certain sectors in society, and you can do a toss up. I mean, Ken can do this, Phil can do this, but I just want you to give a message. Let's begin with business leaders. What message would you like to give to business leaders who are watching and listening to us right now?
Well, I already mentioned it later, is that profit is the applause you get for creating a motivating environment for your people so they'll take good care of your customers. That's my advice to business leaders.
Agree. How about you, Phil?
Well, I think is have passion about your vision, because no organization will grow further than the passion and the values of the leader. So if you must be passionate about it if you're going to transmit it to others, and that would be my advice.
Well, thank you. What about to government officials, especially during this time? A lot of our government officials would really benefit from materials on Lead Like Jesus and servant leadership in general. What advice would you like to give them?
The biggest advice I would try to give them is their leadership should be about we, not me. And they should be saying, what do the people really need? How can I listen to them? What are the big concerns? How can we solve problems rather than get in win-lose confrontations with our political, rivals and all? And so how can you go above it? It gets to what Phil's saying. They got to have a big picture vision.
Yeah. And for government leaders, is you've been given a level of responsibility to be also obedient to the values of the one you follow. God didn't make into secular or sacred. It's all sacred. If he's given work to you to do it honorably and to not fear the consequences of doing the right thing.
I love that. There's no dichotomy between the sacred and the secular. Wonderful. What advice would you give to the younger generation?
I would give the younger generation is that keep learning. Be open to learn. Norman Vincent Peale, when I worked with him, said, if you stop learning, lie down and let them throw the dirt on you because you're already dead. And so I would just tell young people is that life is a learning adventure and keep on learning. Don't realize that you got all the answers.
Wonderful. Phil?
Well, mine is the same for young and old and in between, is trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, but acknowledge him, and always he will make your path straight. He's trustworthy, he's loyal, and he's available. And that's my big thing is try him first and then try him last.
Can you see why he was my spiritual mentor?
Yeah. I'm taking that, Phil. I consider myself in between. Okay. Lastly, to church leaders, to pastors, and to faith organization leaders, what advice would you give them?
Well, my big advice was them to remember what Jesus said. He said, you will be my disciples, be known as my disciples by how you love each other. And then he said, judge not, or you shall be judged. And I think there's too much judgment in churches and arguing about which faith is better than the other, rather than saying we have the greatest teacher and leader of all time in Jesus. And let's remember, he said, it's all about love, and it's all about not judging, but helping people win.
Spot on. Love it. Thank you.
Yeah. Mine will go to the fact that Jesus didn't give us a message and a mission, and not give us a method that would be in harmony with God's will, God's power, and God's grace. And to go and find it in 1 Corinthians 12:31, it says, and now let me show you a more excellent way. And it's love-based leadership. And that means loving as you are loved, that we in fact don't use fear and don't use pride or be motivated by them. But as Jesus did, it was love-based leadership, and it was the greatest and continues to be the greatest. The other part that I would get to is the power of love and the power of grace is not diminished by one iota from the time Jesus said it until the day we live it.
Love it. Thank you so much. My heart is now full. I'm sure a lot of the listeners and viewers tonight also got so much takeaway just by listening to you guys. Again, guys, this is a double treat. Not only do we have Ken Blanchard, but we have Phil Hodges, the founders of Lead Like Jesus. Guys, thank you so much. I cannot thank you more than, of course, God. God has really just allowed all of these things to happen. He orchestrated everything. He brought the two of you together to begin with, and he allowed you to write all those wonderful materials, whether individually or together. And we are just byproducts of that. We were consequences of your faithfulness. So on behalf of everybody here in the Philippines, I just would like to thank you for your faithfulness in your spiritual walk and to the mission that God has given you both.
God bless.
Yeah. Same to you. It's been great to be with you, Boris.
Thank you.